IVM.
Welcome to Think Fast, where every week we give you interesting goss on all that's happening in startups, business, marketing, ads, and all the gossipy things that you don't find in all the gossip magazines and page street publications. I don't know why I'm talking like this today.
This is a very serious podcast about serious things, where we make very lewd jokes about serious things. That's like
that's true.
Closest to gossip we're getting. What's going on, man? Are you all set for your... Let me plug your book before you plug your book yourself.
Yes. Let me show my book. I have many copies. I have one copy in the background. I have one copy here. My book is called Everything's Out of Syllabus. Please pre-order on Amazon.
The reason why Varun's book is a bestseller is because he bought all the copies. Varun, be honest. such bold. You are buying your own copies and gaming
If only.
Become...
The favorite message I've gotten about my book is that my uncle messages me and says, your dad is marketing this really well on all the WhatsApp groups. I'm like, what is my dad doing? And turns out my dad has forwarded the link to every single group he's on. And he has made sure all his friends have bought it. So maybe that's why it became bestseller. All my dad's patients, because dad's a doc, all his patients and his friends have bought the book.
That's so sweet, dude. Parents are useful sometimes. Yeah.
So what's been keeping you busy this week?
What has not been keeping me busy, man? It's just been like a crazy week. I'm currently on like 4 hours of sleep. Hence the shots of caffeine. No, but it's been I feel like, momentum's finally picking up. I feel like we are slowly and steadily moving out of 2021 and actually into the new year. But outside of, general COVID-related shit, it's been a good week for Microsoft. They have scooped up Activision, Blizzard, and I know,
Call of Duty.
Yes, World of Warcraft. I did my research. Yeah, so good week for Microsoft, not so good week for Sony that unfortunately lost $20 billion on their market cap thanks to Microsoft's acquisition. Also not a good week for Novak Djokovic, who has now officially been kicked out of... Yeah, but there's this whole other parallel research happening on like vaccine and athletes and this, that, and the other, but we'll keep that, for another day. It's been a great week for content. I think, the Microsoft acquisition, if nothing else, is testimony to the fact that good content goes a long way. I know you had, you've done some digging around over here as well.
Yeah. So Activision Blizzard, interesting, was going through a very bad patch. Their stock was down like 40% because there was this entire piece about just how the CEO didn't handle sexual harassment allegations properly, right? He just there was a whole thing about bro culture, it almost feels like it's one record which is going around and on, the same story in a lot of these companies. So Microsoft very smartly has picked up the company when they were really down in terms of share price. So great deal for them. Also great deal for the CEO because he gets to stay on till the deal is finalized. It's about a year down. I think it will take for them to finalize it. So he gets to get like a clean break, or if he stays, I don't know if they'll let him stay or make him stay. But he's been a bit of a winner there. But I feel it's been good for everyone. Microsoft, but obviously got this on a discount wholesale rate.
And I think, along with obviously Microsoft, scooping this company up, there have been a lot of really interesting investments that have happened. Old meets new, especially with Hero MotoCorp's investment in electric scooter manufacturer Ather Energy. Ather, I suppose. Vinyl. I don't know. Ather. In any case, Delivery is all set for its IPO with its SEBI nod. Woohoo, go Delivery. I actually really, really like this company, and what they've been able to do is insane. Karnataka government has emerged as a Sasta Tikau Tiger Global. They have committed to invest 50 lakhs in up to 200 startups. Also, the quietest Thrasio of them all, which is Goat Labs, has announced its acquisition of the label Life, which is a popular, apparel, etc. company. Purple has also raised money. So beauty seems to be back in the news. And I know we're going to be talking about it a little later on this episode. And finally, Boat is apparently next in line to hit the IPO station. By the way, irrespective of the gossip mills and the rumor mills on this, their financials are epic. There's this excellent tweet that was posted by the N-Tracker guy who just summarized, their financials from their sales to their losses, which are fairly well managed. They're a profitable company, of course. Just a super well, efficiently run company. That's what I'd say about Boat. What caught your attention outside of Activision?
So on Boat as well. So Aman's going to be on Advertising is Dead episode out tomorrow.
Plug
and one
number
thing
2.
And one of the things he said that really stood out, what you just said, right, is that he said our aim was always to be profitable from day zero. He said that on the episode. I think that's so like because when you're building it like a business, you want to be profitable, and I feel that they've built it like a business. They're very solid. Boat was a client of Glitches for the longest time in their early phase. And I remember that, that they would really focus on every buck spent really smartly. They did a lot of stuff, but they were very smart about it. So, and I think the newest announcement is they just announced a JV with Dixon Technology. So they've always manufactured out of the country. They manufactured in China largely. They're bringing that in to India. So that's also going to be a good move for them. Just looking at the environment, looking at everything else. So all the right moves right before an IPO. So looks good for them.
Good on you, both. Good on you.
Yeah.
Also, hat tip to Aman for being a funny as shark on Shark Tank India.
Yeah. My favorite part is that he and Namita Thapar, is that her full name?
I think so.
Went on a YouTube live with Rohan Joshi, Tanmay Bhatt and Sahil Shah. I give props to best audience question of the last year. Someone actually asked Aman this question from the audience. They said, what if someone starts a company called Headphone and starts selling boats? What would you think about that? Which I think is the legit best question I've heard in a long time. But it's like, I don't know what. He didn't have an answer. Everybody was just laughing, but I think that's a legendary question. Legendary question. You can't ask
Varun,
questions like
you
that.
only must have asked that question. Plug number 3.
I wish.
Just say, we know it was you.
I would have won that badge of honor for life if I'd asked that question, but no, unfortunately, was not me. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about today beyond this as well. But before we do that, and before we get to the Think Fast segment, we need to go in for a break.
Do you wonder why China does the things that it does? Or want to know how we could improve online privacy? Or perhaps you're thinking about how we can kickstart India's economy. If you'd like to search for the answers to such questions, check out All Things Policy, a daily public policy podcast that covers everything from employment figures to aircraft carriers. Tune in from Monday to Friday for new episodes and fresh takes.
Welcome back to Think Fast. We're getting into the Think Fast segment where we throw random questions at each other and try and get Think Fasty responses, or rather fast thought responses. I'm having a bit of a brain fade today while I'm saying these things.
Really but it's usually every other episode, but sure.
I will
Let's specifically call out to today as well.
If I was a superhero, I would be Captain Brain Fade.
Which is a great power to have. But in any case, let me kick off this segment with my first question for you.
Yes,
Mr. Ashneer Grover takes a break. What do you think, Varun? What do you think is happening here?
I guess they didn't really have an option, right? His enemy wasn't it's not like he was CEO, so it's not operationally going to make that big a difference. I'm guessing he was anyway in charge. If I read right, he was only in charge of the big picture and raising another round and raising more funds, etc. So I don't honestly feel he's not going to be a part of the functioning of the company. I just think they'll pull him out from the limelight. I don't know if he's still on Shark Tank. I think he is obviously still on Shark Tank, right? I don't know if that's changed in any way.
Everything's recorded. I don't think that'll get affected.
Yeah, unless they have something left to be recorded. But what else could they have done? I don't think they could have fired him. It's still something which is a little iffy in that case. So this is generally one of those things that you do, making sure that it gets away from the narrative. But what did you think?
So, we've got a epic guest coming up later on as a part of our deep dive. And I'm going to ask him this question because I think especially in today's day and age, founders, whether they like it or not, need to really think about, if not their personal brand, they definitely need to think about their personal reputation. That said, I think, men have an uncanny ability to jump out and out of everything, as we've seen happen countless times in the past. So I think this will just be, a blip on the radar and he'll be back before we know it. But you have a question for me?
My first question to you is, what do you think about Brian Chesky saying he's going to live in Airbnbs this entire year to kind of show that it's no longer about visits, it's about where you live? What do you think about that?
So, I think Brian Chesky is the opposite of Ashneer, where he just is a masterclass in terms of, personal reputation and personal brand management. I think he's across his career at Airbnb, right? He's found this incredible way of making Airbnb seem like the most realistic humble, grounded organization, irrespective of what the reality of the situation may or may not be. Like, I don't know what it's like to work at Airbnb, but at least from whatever he projects, it looks amazing, right? Through their work with refugees, with folks across different communities, they've done really interesting work. I'm not surprised he's, come out with this. This is very like on brand. This is a very like Brian Chesky thing to do, live his brand. So kudos to him, man. He's on brand, and I think a bunch of folks can take a lesson from him. But I want to switch gears into the Netflix effect. We guys were chatting about this earlier, and it seems like anything that Netflix touches somehow just like escapes velocity, breaks into pop culture. You saw that happen with, its focus on Money Heist, on Squid Games. And of course, more recently, F1 has become all the rage where, I was listening somewhere that apparently the viewership of F1 in the US has shot up. And now there are 2 Grand Prix that are slated in this year because of, just a significant amount of credit going to the show. So what do you think of Netflix effect and their ability to break into pop culture?
So here's the thing with Netflix, especially I think Drive to Survive, right, is that there was a large number of people who used to watch Formula One. I was one of them, watch it religiously, who stopped watching because at some point the sport itself got boring. You were just seeing cars go around and around. You didn't see personalities, you didn't see drama. And I guess at some point when you look at other sports, you see the people behind it a lot more. This show in many ways made you really connect with all the characters who are in the sport. So all the drivers, everybody who's leading a team, etc. And I think that's really made it more interesting. Like I watched this season religiously because I saw the show. I haven't watched the races in years. So I think that's what it's really done. It's made it interesting. It's also had a flip effect on the sport, is that a lot of the drivers feel it's dramatized. So they're shown in a certain light, they're shown in a negative light or in any other piece. So I think that's really what's happening. And Netflix has done a great job of showing how any sport can be shown in an engaging manner, but just by showing characters and building a story. So now they can do that with anything.
Absolutely. And I think this is like a really interesting way of not showing sports. Like they don't have, rights to streaming any of the, top sporting events around the world. But this is like a really great angle to, plug in sports without, doing the thing that everyone else has to do, which is bid ridiculous amounts of money. And also, we spoke about this again briefly, but they're apparently focusing on tennis now, which is great because if they can, resurrect the world.
I want to see what they do with Djokovic.
My favorite sport, yes, apart from kicking him out.
Again, going to my next question to you is that Tata's just floated a new arm to get into the whole digital payment side of things. What do you think about that? Tata seems to suddenly be like doing a lot of things, but now digital pay as well.
I think with Tata and with Reliance, it's kind of been this like slow and steady wins the race, right? They've, kind of like quietly waited for, VCs to burn a shit ton of money on all of their, startups. They've quietly started, acquiring pieces and bits and pieces of these puzzles and putting it together. So what their payments play is going to be, I don't know, but I think where I'll give Tata where credit is due is they'll figure their shit out. They've got Mukesh Bansal at the helm of, running all things, building up that digital ecosystem. What their play will be with this, I honestly haven't read up on it. But Tata, Reliance, I think those are 2 companies that will always figure it out. Okay, my last question for you is PVR launches cleaning services.
What?
Did we think this day would come? Yes, as per like a screenshot of an ad posted on Twitter. Apparently, PVR has launched something called Pristine, I think. I'm just opening the tweet up. Pristine by PVR, professional cleaning and disinfection services. Fall from grace, Varun? Fall from grace?
You never know. Some of these things become very interesting revenue lines. I mean, you go by what Amazon did years ago about taking every single cost item and making it into like a revenue item. But obviously fall from grace for obvious reasons and all the problems they face. But it's interesting. It might be interesting to see how this scales up, or is it just like one of those, let's see, we anyway have people sitting around when theaters aren't fully open, let's have them do this. But you never know. It's an interesting idea, but I don't know if I would you call in a cleaning service because they are a PVR cleaning service? I don't know. Are theaters that clean? Again, a question I have sometimes in my head.
They aren't, which is why I don't go to them anymore. And I just sit on my ass at home and watch Netflix.
My last question to you in this Think Fast segment today. Have you seen the new small case ads? So, which obviously same bunch who've done the cred ads, Tanmay and Bopana and that entire bunch. Very interesting set of pieces. What do you think about them?
So honestly, I love the ads as someone who knows what Small Case does. If I didn't know what Small Case did, I'd be really, really confused. So they've released about 3, and
So basically, same thing about Elecred.
I think with Cred, it was still brand marketing, right? Like it had, it was about pushing the brand out. I think in this case, it's not really brand marketing. It is, using like nuance. Like it's a very intelligent ad, but I think the only people who I think will get this are people who know what Small Case is, because like the nuance of Small Case comes out if you understand what the product does. Will this prompt me to check out Small Case? I don't know. I don't know, because again, it's not even wacky. You know what I mean? Like with the Cred ads, like everything that they created was so like crazy and clickbaity, where, it was just the wackiness of it that pulled you towards, checking Cred out. But I don't know. Good ad, like very intelligent ad, really well made. But I don't know if,
explaining
I don't
what
know
it is,
the
I think, is an
ROI.
important part. Yeah. That's actually an interesting point. Does it explain what the brand actually does? Again, it's a question that people ask about Cred, but it's not as high on drama or like wow, but it's also like not explaining the brand, which is, I think, is interesting. I didn't think about it from that angle, but it makes total sense. Might be a point for them to think about.
Yeah, no, but I think now it's time for us to take a break. But when we come back from the break, Varun, do you want to tell our guests what they can expect?
We're going to be doing some interesting short segments. One talking about all things beauty and personal care, and also going to dig into what Instagram just announced, the subscriptions. Instagram's doing a lot of moves. Suddenly, Adam Mosseri, one of the most interesting CEOs to follow on social media, made this announcement. But I want to dig into that, and we'll jam on that as well. So,
ladies and gents, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back.
Eventually, you'll see the end of your childhood,
get accustomed to womanhood,
enjoy the experience of sisterhood,
might get to wifehood,
or not, choose motherhood,
or not. You'll learn to define your personhood,
earn a livelihood,
change the neighborhood,
and get rid of the falsehood that life post-academia is easy.
So join me, Ritasha,
and me, Ayushi,
on a journey from station starting point
to station, what now?
Next station, Pudin station, and hopefully, Agla station, adulthood.
Fresh episodes out every Thursday.
Welcome back to Think Fast. This is our short segment.
We've got I want to kick off with my segment. It's not really my segment, but like a segment, which is the beauty and personal care segment. Obviously, Varun, we've been tracking the news. We've spoken about beauty multiple times, all thanks to the Good Glam Group buying any and everything under the sun. In our first episode, in fact, we also spoke about Paytm versus Nykaa, right? And the real, like, in the best possible way, upheaval of beauty that happened last year thanks to Nykaa's absolutely kick-ass IPO. I think the one thing that's become abundantly clear over the past 2 years is that, beauty and personal care isn't feature. It actually has the capability of being a product. So up until, Nykaa really came about, and then obviously you parallelly saw the, wins in the form of Mama Earth and Sugar, all kind of sprout up at the same point in time. BPC was like one of the categories on Amazon, right? Or it was one of the categories on Flipkart, Myntra, and the likes, never really taken that seriously. There was also like a semi-exodus of like large international beauty brands happening from India, where retail wasn't built out enough. There weren't enough distribution channels online. And obviously from a customer's point of view, the biggest question with respect to buying beauty online was, is this shit real or is it fake? And you cut to 2021 and now 2022, the peak of which was, Nykaa's IPO that really sent the message that BPC isn't just something that, consumers want a separate experience for, but is also a category that can deliver tremendous market value to investors, shareholders, employees, and the likes. So just to, first give our listeners a quick overview of the BPC market. The beauty and personal care market in India is currently valued at about 26.8 billion. This is both online and offline, and is poised to reach 37.2 billion by 2025. The source over here being Inc. 42. The second I mention BPC, you immediately think of like, names like Mama Earth, Sugar, Wow Science, Himalaya, and for Himalaya from their, personal care and their beauty segment, their face wash, that neem face wash continues to be one of their best sellers, to date. We've also got subcategories like sanitary pads. And I mean, imagine there's been an explosion in the number of companies within sanitary pads itself, where, you have everything from Nua to Cardmacy, and many, many more in the likes. Also, men's personal care products, are worth a note over here. You've got Beardo, Ustra, The Man Company, Bombay Shaving Company. Have you tried any of these brands out, by the way?
Actually, all of them over time. And some of them are like Bombay Shaving is actually a great company to kind of use. I love their products and just how it is. Haven't used too much of Beardo in recent times, but I think they've all kind of built out their own, the way they've been able to build perception, but also the product ranges are in many ways the same, but they just differentiate really smartly by just like the brands that they are.
Yeah. And, I think there's one company which we don't talk about enough, but I want to give a shout out to on this podcast, which is Vinny Cosmetics, the brand behind Fog Deos. And in fact, I think just about last year, KKR paid 4,600 crores to get a majority stake in Vinny Cosmetics. So you've actually seen, all parts of the BPC world, explode, right? And if you had to double tap on trends, one big trend obviously is, folks have gone from single brands to multi-brand plays. You saw that happening
House
with
of
Purple.
brands. Yeah.
Exactly. So, for example, Purple has their own in-house brands that they've launched. They've also acquired a couple externally. You've had Mama Earth. They acquire all types of brands and even create their own brands. Like the Derma Co is their own internal brand, and obviously your favorite company, MyGlam, which ends up acquiring a new brand every single day. So that's been one big trend. The second big trend, I don't know if you've taken notice of this, though you guys have worked on Lakme's account, which isn't which isn't only an emerging brand company, but for instance, a brand like Calabar has really looked at expanding their presence in markets like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Canada, and many more. You've also got celebrity brands, man. Deepika Padukone apparently is launching a brand in the BPC space or something like that.
Did she have one already? She had, or was that a foundation?
Yeah, there was a paddle, All About You or some such thing that she'd done in collaboration.
Yeah, All About You, correct. Yeah.
There's Katrina Kaif, who's worked very closely with Nykaa on K-Beauty, and there's Shraddha Kapoor, who's invested in MyGlam and also sort of, become their face. You also had celebrity makeup artist Namrata Soni, who launched her own beauty line. And I think the thing where, I'd love to get like your 2 cents is there's also a lot of like new age brands that have come up, right? That have picked up very specific niches and tried to make markets out of those. So if you had to give a shout out to your favorite new age brands, which ones would those be?
I want a bit of a throwout here after my brain fade to Arata. I really like Arata because I think at some point, the thing which actually caught my attention is that I never realized that my hair grows curly because I never grew my hair out longish. And suddenly like none of the shampoos really work for that. And suddenly there's this brand talking about that specific use case, which is not like normal curls, but, just like slightly in between manner. And I tried the products and they're great. I've actually been using the products for a while now. I think that's interesting, right? You're looking at individual use cases, you look at ingredients. And at some point, you're also kind of connecting by saying which aspect of what a consumer wants to connect with. You connect with them from just like what they kind of want from a perception standpoint, but also like what they want from an ingredient standpoint. I actually read ingredients these days.
Yeah.
Okay, I like this ingredient more. And there've been a lot of those happening. Actually sampling a lot lately.
Yeah, you saw that with onion oil take off the way it did, aloe products, turmeric products. But I think the question that, I had when I was researching on this is what is left to dominate? So if you've got all of these big marketplaces like Nykaa, Purple, Amazon, Flipkart and the likes really doubling down on, all things BPC, you've got new brands coming up doing all sorts of D2C plays. And when I look at what the opportunities are in, there are 5 that I found, right? I think the first one is content, community and creators. We spoke about this in the Nykaa episode where Nykaa in their filing very categorically said what a big role content and community building played in them being able to build a moat around, their business. In fact, double tapping on creators, there's a semi-popular creator called Anam C who's launched her own makeup brand called Verified, which I think went live a couple of weeks ago.
Very interesting brand.
Yeah, there's all of that's happening. And even from an ecosystem perspective, right, I wanted to call out to this company called Air Black, which actually is building tools for, people who want to learn about makeup, whether, from a professional standpoint or maybe just as a hobby. They are actually doing this whole, creator to brand kind of economy building through their product and platform. There's a company called Rennie Cosmetics, and their founders have apparently launched some, the beauty startup series where, again, it's a lot of founders sort of playing in the whole, creator narrative almost. So I think there's one massive opportunity in content, community and creators, and not just as a brand using content, community and creators, but also platforms emerging for beauty content, beauty community and beauty creators to come up and really galvanize what BPC could do in the future. I also want
I think
to
actually one piece which when you're saying this, I think what's interesting is there's a gap is that I think the male side is actually still very open for expansion. I'm saying that because, and I was just thinking about what I just said earlier, and I was like, all the brands have the same set of, because you're going to get a set of things, right? I think for guys, at least the required set of things are much smaller. So, but they all the brands kind of feel the same. Like if you put a man company next to a Bombay shaving company, and you put a Beardo next to Anusara, they all kind of feel the same. And I think there's an opportunity there, especially kind of grow because, us guys need more options. And if you actually go to an international site called the Mister, and you'll check that how brands are opening up in places like Australia, etc., there's almost a distinct difference from brand to brand. But here we're still not seeing that on the male side.
That's an interesting point. No, 100%. I think, on the I think, taking from what you said, I think the other thing that is really left to dominate is products that actually work. I am like the OG D2C brand trialist, right? And I've tried every single brand under the sun. It's still very tough to find brands that have the finesse and the formulation like that of well-established international brands. In fact, there's a blogger called Komal Basit who wrote a pretty scathing but good post on, a lot of Indian and emerging beauty brands passing off substandard products, all in the name of, natural, Ayurveda or handmade. But somewhere, there has to be a control over ingredients being used, testing those ingredients out, and also making sure that products are delivered much more consistently to users. And I think the third area that I would, invest in if I was either looking at this space or if I was creating in this space is retail. Because if you think about the offline shopping experience for beauty, obviously keeping standalone beauty stores outside, you've got Nykaa, you've got Sephora, you've got Shoppers Stop, who are basically the only real, players. You've obviously got Health and Glow and the likes also, but these are really the few players that you've got in the premium to a luxe-ish, kind of segment. And I think here's where there's an opportunity to, I don't know if you've seen Glossier stores. So Glossier is, very popular beauty brand in the US. Their stores are a work of art, and they truly are, experience centers. Unlike the Sephora Meetos that we've created over here. So if I were investing in the beauty space, three things, who's building the ecosystem, who's building products that actually work, and finally who's really creating that phenomenal retail experience versus just another point of sale.
When you mentioned Glossy, I was thinking that a while back, and this is almost like 4 odd years ago, and we were having this discussion in the office, and one of the things that came out about how Glossier even does things is that the packaging for the product can open up and become a backdrop for an Instagram post. And I thought that was genius. You're actually giving something for the creator who might put up something with your product, and you facilitating a background for their Instagram imagery, right? And I think,
and if you see pictures of their store, man, you know what they did? Like they opened a store, I think I'm forgetting where, but they literally recreated the Grand Canyon or like parts of it. And they got this guy to go and record the sounds from the Grand Canyon, and it basically plays in the store. You know what I mean? Like it's that attention to detail, which I just see lacking, especially in Indian retail, let alone Indian beauty retail.
Yeah. Speaking of attention to detail, time to go into our next topic in this. Instagram seems to be suddenly doing a lot of things. In Instagram, CEO Adam Mosseri just announced.
He listens to think fast. He listens to think fast.
We talk about them a lot, and he's listening to us. I also really like him on Instagram. He's a very likable character on Instagram. He's one of those.
I mean, his comparison is Mark Zuckerberg, who's like the opposite of likable. So
he's an Android. Mark Zuckerberg is an actual Android.
Don't be mean to my phone. But in any case, we digress. So Instagram, what have they done now, Varun?
They've so one of the things he did an announcement towards late December saying this year they're going to focus on a set of things. First announcement which he just did is that they're launching subscriptions. They're doing a small test with a few creators in the US, but basically a creator can kind of build predictable income by saying, okay, you can subscribe to my account by paying a certain amount of money every month. You're going to get a lot of exclusive, there'll be an entire story stream which is going to be exclusive. Lives are going to be exclusive for them separately. All subscribers get a purple badge, and they're adding in more and more pieces over time, which you give exclusively to your subscribers versus everybody else. And if you look at the UI change he spoke about earlier as well, where you can always have a drop down where, it's your followers and just overall, etc. I think over there as well, eventually just have a drop down and only your subscribers or what you subscribe to can be in your feed. So it's an interesting move for them. It's a little late. A lot of other people have done it in the past. Like YouTube's done it 4 years ago. But they're moving in a direction which is interesting. It's a great move.
I don't know, man. I think at some level, Instagram needs to take a call on who is their customer. Is their customer an advertiser or is it the creator? Because I think somewhere in the mix of all of this, right, who their core customer is getting lost. And I don't know how well YouTube subscription did for YouTubers.
I don't think it did that well.
I don't really, even international YouTubers who I subscribe to, I don't see them doing very much, using subscription, this, that, and the other. So I don't know. I think at some level, Instagram needs to fundamentally take a call on what is my business model, right? Am I going down the ad route? Because if they're going down the advertising route, then for them, everything comes down to time spent. And time spent isn't only a function of, great creators. It's also a function of how you, push content out to users. And I found this a little bit in conflict with, his last post, which was on Reels and short form video becoming a big area of focus for them. Because I don't know, I don't really see consumers subscribing to 15-second short form content. You know what I mean? Like somewhere there'll have to be a flexibility.
This is why he didn't mention that at all. If you realize in this announcement, Reels are not mentioned at all in what is exclusive to subscribers. You get stories, you get lives, which means basically you have live interactions you're paying for this. Weirdly enough, nobody's mentioned this, but it sounds a lot like OnlyFans to me.
Yeah.
Like people put up an OnlyFans link on their Instagram, so you can go there, so you get exclusive lives, you get exclusive sneak peek into things. I'm just going to leave that explanation at that about OnlyFans. But I feel that if you look at YouTube had this, but YouTube never really built anything into that. Like you have a few things here and there. I think the whole, I forget the term that's used, but if you're on a super chat, so if you're on a live and you do a super chat, you're actually paying a creator for your comment to be highlighted. That actually does really well for creators on live streams on YouTube. But what you're seeing increasingly is creators, I don't know how much they're going to use this to build communities. What might be interesting to look at is one announcement he said towards the end of his video. He said that they will enable creators to export the entire list of people who are subscribing to them, so they can take that to other platforms as well, which is very unlike Facebook, that you can export something. I mean, they still don't let you put a clickable link in a post. But the fact that he said that means that there is obviously a lot. I have a feeling that by this time next year, Instagram is going to be a very different platform. It already is, but I think it's going to be a very, very different platform.
But I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. And again, the reason why I bring this up is because, you can't, either you change the game, right? And the problem with a lot of these, let's loosely call them digital media platforms, is that everything ends up being in the general direction of Pareto. So you'll have your top 10% in Substack fall into the same issue, where Substack, unless you're like a top creator on Substack, you're, just about collecting pennies. And I think, the question that it comes back to, which we briefly even discussed with Shefali in our last episode, is will this really enable creation of a middle class of creators on Instagram, right? Where you've got folks who can run side hustles, on Instagram, whether it's, hosting workshops, events, whatever the hell else, to sit and make a quick buck. Also, the other question that I'd have is, what are the kind of live sessions that I'd be willing to, I don't know, I think somewhere in the construct of what's the content that
so the live is interesting, because a lot of workshops these days, a large part of the audience wants it to be live. So would you pay to watch an interview? Would you pay for a live workshop? Would you pay to be on an AMA? But more than anything else, it's going to be exclusive content. And while I don't think that's worked really well for a YouTube, because no one's really done that, because YouTube also doesn't let you do that, right? You just have additional things like badges and all that stuff. What's super interesting is that this is almost like a hit on Patreon. Also, in another way, Patreon obviously has grown by just giving that over there. And on the other end of things, what could really be interesting to do is that if I'm a creator today and I'm like, okay, what can I give my subscribers? I actually look at what podcast platforms are doing. An Apple Podcast and a Spotify have done is that you just take ads out of the mix. You're suddenly making it a lot cleaner. Like I've actually listened to episodes where I've subscribed to an entire podcast network within Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. it's a much better experience. I'm not worried about the ads. I'm getting a lot more bonus content. I'm getting exclusive pieces. So you never know. But for that, they're becoming a media company. But I don't think they want to commit to becoming TikTok, because I think TikTok, while it's a massive platform globally, how much money is TikTok really making is a question. And how much money can you put into ads on 15-second 60-second clips is always going to be a question. So Instagram, I think, will never leave that aspect of still putting ads into the regular posts, etc. But yeah, the mishmash is there. But I'm weirdly always been an Instagram optimist, and I see these as right moves.
I don't know, man. I think ever since the founders kind of, left. By the way, I did a quick Google search. TikTok owner ByteDance saw its total revenue grow by 70% year on year to around 58 billion. So they're making a shit ton of money. Yes. But basically, I think somewhere Instagram needs to figure out a way to plug itself out of Facebook, because it just seems like they're repeating a lot of the mistakes that Facebook makes. And I think that was TikTok's beauty, right? TikTok's beauty was it just made consumption simple. YouTube, sure, maybe a clunky platform, may not have the world's most beautiful design, this, that, or the other, but I know the use case of YouTube, right? I know that I'm going there to watch, mid to long format, content. Podcast, the second you open podcasts on like Pocket Casts or Spotify or whatever else, you're going to be plugged into something for the next 30 minutes minimum. And I think somewhere that expectation setting with consumers is like totally missing from Instagram. It doesn't take away from the fact that it's a fun platform to use. I've said this multiple times, but God knows how much time I spend on Instagram, right? But I think somewhere the value proposition is just getting lost. And if you think about all the experiments that they've done, like remember when they launched Save as a feature? This was like 3-4 years ago. And everyone just like, oh my God, Pinterest is dead. Like, long live Pinterest. I mean, Pinterest is kind of dying basis their market performance. But basically, that single feature, which was supposed to be the Pinterest killer, has died somewhere in the general spectrum of all things Instagram. They even launched that guides feature, which has, disappeared and has gone basically nowhere. So I don't know. I think somewhere their their product approach needs to become cleaner. And I think this is where, either they need to get a founder back in who is like madly passionate about, what they're building and what they're doing. And I think that's where, having someone like an Evan Spiegel still in charge of Snapchat goes a long way. I don't know if you saw, but Snapchat did this super interesting thing where they're basically using the Snap glasses, goggles, whatever they're called. And you can see, and they're running experiments where you can, if you're looking at a shoe, you can see the shoe in 3D form. So So this is and this was posted by Snap's product head. You guys can, listeners, you can do a quick Google search. But basically, the point that I'm making is somewhere, what the product use case is, what the clarity is. Am I coming here for anything and everything? Am I coming here for a very simple, entertaining experience? What am I coming here for? Just seems to be all over the place for Instagram. And I think they really need to take a lesson from TikTok, who have crushed it by just sticking to simple shit, but just making that simple shit so joyful for both the consumer as well as the creator, which, I don't think they're doing right now.
It's a little bit of everything. But I'm still, as always, bullish on Instagram because I like the platform. I spend a lot of time there. And I like Adam Mosseri. I think there's something interesting about him. But before I get deeper into that conversation, let's go for a break. And we have a guest today. We've been yapping away and we have a guest today, guys. We've kept you away from him for so long. And his geniusness. Yes, so we'll bring the guest on board. But before that, we're going for a break. We're going for a break and be right back with Think Fast.
A wise man once said, traveling, it makes you speechless, then turns you into a storyteller.
Well, listen to such travel stories and experiences exploring India on the Musafir Stories with us, Saif and Faiza.
Catch us on the IVM website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Okay, welcome back to Think Fast. We have a very interesting guest today. I must tell you this, that anything which I say that I have found something new and interesting in the marketing space or communication space is generally because I've seen our guests post on LinkedIn, generally. Karthik Srinivasan, I don't think calling you a communications consultant will do you justice. You're just one of those people who's giving an encyclopedia of what's going on in the marketing and comm space, which all of us kind of feed off of. So welcome to the show. Me and Suchita have a long list of questions for you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Varun, again.
Suchita, do you want to kick off? Do you want me to kick off? I think we both spoke about a bunch of questions we want to do, but I'm going to let you, because you have spent quite an amount of time running through his blog.
Yes, guys, you must check it out. How do you say it? Beast of Troll?
It's Beast of Troll. It's a character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's I never really gone to fiction, but yeah, I will join the dots somewhere in my head. No, but I want to kick off with, the topic that's been all over the news, which for better or for worse is Mr. Ashneer Grover. And, now he's been asked to sort of step out for a little bit and take a leave of absence. You obviously specialize in personal brand, and in today's day and age, for founders especially, it's become so important to be cognizant of, what your digital reputation is, irrespective of what the actuality of it may or may not be, in your offices. If you were managing Ashneer Grover, or if you had to give him a piece of advice, what would it be? How do you navigate a scenario like this?
I mean, like, good topical question. So what happened with Ashneer is not his personal brand. It's actually his personal reputation, which is quite different. The personal brand is who you say you are, particularly to strangers. And your personal reputation is how you live by what you say who you are, quite literally. And he may have given out a personal brand commitment that he is so and so, but that is probably at crossroads with how he behaved when nobody was watching, particularly on a call. I mean, in the call that went viral online from strangers. So that that happened. So there is probably a mismatch between the personal brand and the personal reputation, and that's what is going through. So I think the personal leave of absence is a good enough start. But he probably need to showcase more. What is he going to do in his leave that will make people believe that he truly repents whatever he did, in case he repents whatever. I mean, he could completely say that this is who I am. I'm going to live by this, etc. I mean, that's who he is. That's perfectly fine. But if he's bothered about his brand also, apart from reputation, he probably needs to put across a set of things that he is likely to do, and probably also showcase a couple of things that he's doing to move away from that kind of stuff. So that's probably what I would recommend. Showcase small steps towards saying that that's not the person that I would like to be. I was, which is fine, but I don't want to be like that person anymore. I want to move on and do something better.
If that is truly what you want to do, move on and be something better.
Correct. I mean, for all you know, he might want to be an abrasive person, which is perfectly fair. I mean, he's not doing anything illegal. It's just that we judge him poorly based on his opinion. If it works for him as a brand, so be it. But if he doesn't want to do it, then he needs to take some steps. That's it.
And, if you juxtapose that to, for example, someone like a Brian Chesky, who's been a master of brand management, right? And I think Airbnb can do no wrong when it comes to, not just the organizational PR, but even Brian Chesky's own PR, right? And in fact, recently he sort of tweeted about how he's going to spend the next couple of months living out of Airbnbs.
Actually, what is
next year,
next 1 year.
So what is your take on founders getting so deeply entrenched in what their brand's value proposition is? Because this can be a slippery slope, right? You can go the Microsoft route or the Steve Jobs route, where you just become almost synonymous with the brand, where everything, you become the fall guy and the win guy for everything. So what would be your 2 cents to founders who are straddling in between really representing the brand, but also making sure that, the brand isn't fallible based on their own reputation and persona?
Got it. From my experience of doing workshops for corporates on personal branding, particularly for the CXO levels, I've noticed that some of the legacy brand CXOs who are not, who don't think themselves as digital first. They actually started much before the digital internet collaboration kind of wave. They are generally more reticent for putting themselves out on a public platform like a Twitter or a LinkedIn, and they probably join much later. Probably the good example is probably the Volkswagen CEO. He joined much later than most other people. And I've also noticed that most of the startup founders who are young, who think themselves as digital natives and digital first, they're completely okay. They're okay saying that I might make mistakes, but let me put myself out there and see what comes out. And then I will just course correct as the way goes out, kind of thing. The first point I try to tell both of them, both the legacy founders and the startup founders, is define what you want your brand to be. If you don't define and you go in 100 different directions, people don't get a handle of who this person is. But if you define and then live up to it by showcasing various strands of what you want to be, and this is what I'm doing towards it kind of stuff, then it actually is a good match between what you want to do. So that definition need not be professional alone. It can be part professional, part personal. So they could say that I want to be thought as somebody who's deeply interested in finance space in India. If I am in the PhonePe or like the BharatPe space, I want to be known for my views in the finance space, but I also want to be known for my interest in, say, photography and running. So those are the three contours of my personal brand. And the more I talk about them, more people would believe that this is what makes me tick, kind of stuff. So that's largely it, actually. The brand definition is most important. It is just corporate branding 101 mapped to personal branding. That's it.
I think what you said about the terms used early on, I thought that's so interesting, because this term personal brand has now become such a thing, right? You'll have, I think there are enough DMs which go around saying, no, we will help you build a personal brand. This is, we'll do the design, we'll do all of that stuff. But this reputation versus brand, I think, is so interesting, because in many ways people are saying they're something which maybe they're not. And I think that's super interesting for someone to kind of look into, because in many ways those are seeping down into the brands they work for, the professions they do, people they connect with in many ways. And if the person who in perception is not exactly like who someone meets, that goes fully sideways. So I think the reputation part is super interesting. Have you seen that also on the brand side in recent times? In terms of, if you look at a brand, not an individual, how much have you seen that happen? Because it's, I don't know if I'm wrong, this is a lot more post-internet, post-social media, especially the last 5 years, where you want the brand to mean something and actually be that. Yeah. Have you seen that narrative change about how brands are looking at themselves as well?
It is, obviously. For instance, any brand that is online on a social media platform, which is highly interactive and conversational, they are putting themselves out there as a brand. But from a corporate point of view, the main difference is that, for instance, Coca-Cola is one brand, but so is Sprite, so is Thumbs Up, which is all owned by the same brand. So the brand Coca-Cola's reputation is an amalgamation of all the individual brands' reputation. Whereas in a personal sense, my own brand and my own reputation is just me, who I interact with, what I do. The main difference is that brand is mainly for strangers to know this is who I am. And my personal brand reputation or my personal reputation is for people who know me to believe that I say something and I actually stand by what I say, kind of stuff. So that's the main difference. It's almost like the difference between social media and social network. Social media is a broadcast channel meant to talk to strangers. Social network is a messaging channel meant to talk to people you already know and people you know already, kind of stuff. That's the kind of difference actually between brand and reputation.
And can I just going wider from there, what have you seen as larger trends in the space? Because I know that you obviously track about what's happening across brands, across kind of marketing they're doing, etc. What have you really seen change in just how brands are communicating, especially, and I count the last 2 years as being a lot of stuff has changed, but some stuff has also been a little weird. So what's changed, what's gotten weird, and what's stayed the same?
One large thing that I noticed, because it is largely enabled social media and internet, is that brands are telling interesting stories. The stories are really interesting. And they are okay to put the brand narrative as incidental points within the storytelling, which is very different from advertising. Advertising's sole effort is to make people perform a call to action, whether it's try to remember the brand in a positive way or buy that product, whichever it is. But now they're actually willing to put the brand story almost incidental to the overall narrative. A very good example is that massively viral Amazon Diwali film or Amazon Raksha Bandhan film last year. Both don't put Amazon, the brand, front and center. It is literally incidental. In fact, in the Diwali film, it was almost shoehorned in a very corny way, because that guy is actually holding an Amazon branded box, which is very rare actually. I mean, if you're going to gift that to somebody, you would probably gift wrap it very nicely without Amazon brand at all and give it to them. But it was literally shoehorned. But the story was extremely heartwarming, heart-wrenching. It made a very interesting point which no other brand had made in the last 1 year at all, because it actually went to the March-April peak phase 2 period of the viral and how we helped each other, kind of stuff, which no other brand has actually spoken about at all so far. And they made that point. But that was the main fulcrum of that film. Amazon was not at all. We just say that, Diwali wala film that Amazon made. That's about it. There is nothing about the brand at all that they can communicate with that. More and more brands seem to be doing that quite effectively, actually. For instance, take the promos that Netflix did for Minnal Murli. There is one thing to just say, watch Minnal Murli. That's a very categorical call to action. But there's entirely another to actually do a comic strip in, I think it was in Malayalam Manorama for 3 days just before the release of Minnal Murli, where people just enjoy a comic strip which is start to end, it ends. That's about it. And then because you're so interested, you'll say, okay, I need to also watch this movie. This sounds very, very interesting. Or the online extension they did with, I think it was with Yuvraj Singh and Khali. They did something basically.
Yeah,
they were a very, very interesting piece of content on its own, even without you watching Minnal Murli. But they indirectly lead you to watching that movie also eventually if it's available. So I think they're okay to put the brand story as an incidental part of the narrative, trusting viewers and audiences to get to that call to action without spelling it out, saying, buy my product today, without doing that. So I think that's quite interesting, actually.
I wanted to add one more thing that I had noticed, right? And in the same line of, brands sort of making their brands secondary to the primary message, there's this trend of almost being woke with your content, right? Yeah. You've got, and not to say that in a bad light, but for example, you had Cadbury sort of rejig their iconic ad with, a female cricket player. You had Tinder sort of, stretch the boundaries with their, conversation around consent, etc. How are you seeing brands straddle this, thing of wanting to be woke and also, the more recent ASCI report where Indians seem to be offended by anything and everything under the sun. How do you see brands strike a balance in between, pushing the boundaries with challenging Indian customers, but making sure they're not cancelled by the very same customers tomorrow?
Got it. I, for one, don't believe woke is a bad word at all. Woke is just you are hyper aware of your fellow citizens' concerns and fellow humans' way of living. That's about it. You're just hyper aware of it. Whether you do something about it or not is the next point. First, you are hyper aware. That's literally woke. Unfortunately, it has become a very bad word because of the way it has been framed, the way it has been positioned. We probably need a personal branding lesson for the word woke itself, unfortunately. So it's become that sad. But brands using so-called woke narratives in their communication is not very different from a masala movie maker trying to infuse 6 fights and 3 songs in a movie. It is the same thing because that person knows how his core audience will react to a fight scene and what are the steps that lead to a fight scene, or how an audience will react to a song situation. What are the points that lead to that? It is exactly the same. So you're literally engineering audience attention, which is what happens both in movies and in advertising. It's very standard. But at some time, you may probably misjudge how much the audience will like or not like what you're engineering. And which is probably what happened with Tanish's 2020 film that was Ekatvam, which was very sad actually. All it was showing is people being extremely peaceful and happy with each other. That's about it, regardless of what religion they belong to. That's what it showed. But it went into completely different tangent. Same thing happened with Seat last year. All it was showing is, please don't burst crackers on the road. It'll be a problem. Please do it inside your own apartment complex. That's about it. But it went into a complete tangent. And Fab India is a very different case altogether.
That was for using one.
It's completely tragic. I mean, the point is that all these brands' punishment for doing something wrong should be less sales. That's about it. But their punishment went into something like an offline thug kind of effect saying, I will shut you down no matter what. And that's what went. And there was a major viral WhatsApp forward recently when Fab India announced very poor results. They announced the results for the last 1 year. And that actually came just after they finished their Diwali campaign, just about 2 or 3 days or just probably a month after that. And people started saying, look, we actually made them a bad guy and look, they have lost sales. There is no connection between both at all. People want to see a connection, they're building a connection there. It's quite sad, actually.
This whole offense piece, I think, is also a topic which comes up quite often, right? There was a period when you would see advertising going a certain direction. And I think it's almost like a up and down scenario. You'll have a period when everyone's trying to make stuff. I hate the word edgy, so I'm just going to try and come up with a different word. Everyone calls it edgy advertising. I hate that term. Trying to at least go beyond what is normal. Let me just put it that way.
Out of the box, Varun. Out of the box.
That's even worse.
That's even worse. Edgy, out of the box. I will not say viral also. That's a whole different conversation. And then it goes back down here. So in the way they're kind of putting these things out, is everyone going to try and play safer now? And then if you play safer, then you're going to do more of the same. Do you see that as something that's happening a lot now? Slowly?
I don't think so. Nobody wants to play safer anymore, despite thugs actually calling up their employees offline and try to wait outside the showroom and say, please write an apology note. Despite all that, I don't think anybody would be in a safer zone, because the main point of advertising and marketing is to make memories. That's it. Whether it's positive memories, bad memories, whatever, you need to make memories. I mean, if it's positive, it's good for your brand. And that's what everybody is going towards. If you stay on the safe zone, you cannot make memories at all of any sort. The worst thing that can happen to a brand is not be loved or hated. It is being indifferent. If people are indifferent to the brand, that's a horrendous thing to happen. At least hated means I took note of something and I hated it. Yeah. I actually love something, I took note and I love it. Indifferent, I have nothing to say about your brand. That's horrible state actually. So I don't think anybody's going to be safe at all.
So is all publicity good publicity? Is that the TLDR here? Like, it doesn't matter?
Not necessarily. I mean, that used to be the case prior to internet and social media. Now you can actually, I mean, you as an individual with barely few followers can also turn the narrative around. Basically, what happens is the brand is putting out one narrative with a lot of money in very powerful medium, which reaches a lot of people. But somebody, even with a limited number of followers, can actually stroke the imagination of a larger number of people saying, that's what the brand said. Here is a counter opinion. Think about it this way. And it is out there. And somebody very popular could just take it and then take it to the world saying, yeah, I saw the brand, but this is a point of view I really like. Please trust this kind of stuff. So all publicity is not good publicity. As much as possible, if brands can put something out that is largely understood in a particular direction, particular way, it's good for the brand ideally.
But I wanted to ask, one follow-on question on edginess, right? The campaign of last year was creds, hotly debated. Did this ad make sense? Did it make no sense? Yeah. Why are they working with Daler Mehndi? If I had to put you on the hot seat, how would you rate that campaign? And also their, recurring use of the same sort of format with obviously new characters coming into play?
In fact, I did a top 10 ads of last year, and the cred ad featuring Rahul Dravid one was one of them, definitely. The other ones in the same series which did more of the same, it didn't work for me as much as the Rahul Dravid one, because that came completely out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting an out-of-turn character of all the people, Rahul the Wall Dravid. Nobody expected it at all. So they fully knew that they have got people's attention with that thing. And it worked wonderfully well. So with or without I knowing more about cred or wanting to do something about cred, they made a solid memory. And now if I talk about Rahul Dravid going apeshit, it's a cred ad. Everybody understands it's a cred ad. He just acted. But the subsequent ones were not as powerful as the one. In fact, I didn't even like the 2020 version of what they did with celebrities, like people like, I think, Anil Kapoor, Madhuri Dixit, everybody. That audition one, I thought that was a bit disrespectful to those celebrities, because you're telling them that we're going to mock you. It's almost like a roast session that's happening there, basically. Yeah. And then they are doing it kind of. That didn't work for me at all. But this one was fantastic. I think this was really, really well done. And here again, if you notice both the thing from 2020 and 2021, they are using the celebrities in a very incidental, throwaway manner. Those celebs are not selling cred to you at all. They're just doing something on their own. And there is absolutely no connection between what Jim Sarbh talks in the beginning, in the introduction, which is a droll thing saying, this is what cred does, and please install cred, download cred, blah, blah. And by the way, watch this also. And then there's something complete contrast to both. It's almost like they're trolling the audience. Look, we're going to show you something completely bizarre. Just enjoy. That's it.
Weirdly enough, the one I enjoyed the most was the Kapil Dev one recently, because I just thought that was too much fun to just see Kapil Dev like that. Yeah. And then actually spend time and watch the behind the scenes, because Tanmay actually shot that, and I thought that was super fun, because some of those were improvised by Kapil Dev himself, which I thought was super fun. That he said, I want to try something, and the director sitting and saying, well, let him do what he's doing. Which is again,
in fact, if I need to add, my second favorite after Dravid one was actually one featuring Venkatesh Prasad and a couple of other cricketers who actually did a boy band song. That was hilarious. As hilarious, actually. Yeah.
And so when you're seeing this entire, I think this pattern of creating ads, right? And obviously now they've done that same thing with small case as well. The same bunch has done something of small case. It's almost like taking what is a YouTube video, what makes that work in terms of sketch, and moving into this thing. Yeah. Does it help the brand? Do you think it does?
I hope it does. I'm not sure. Only the brand can actually talk about that, not me and you.
But apparently it did help cred from whatever data that they release. And to your point, right, it is about just getting customers to notice what the brand has to offer. And obviously, I'm assuming like Dravid for them would have literally hit it out the park.
The other piece which I know that supremely, because one of the things I wait for you to put up a post about how either a national brand has not localized properly, and suddenly you have front page ads in full Hindi across, let's say, Chennai and Bangalore and everywhere else. And the other side is talking about really local brands and what they're doing interestingly. So I'd want to pick your brain about what you see. It's almost like a broad base. What are brands doing wrong when they do these, and why is that wrong? And what have you seen local brands do really well?
Why is that wrong from a national point of view? In fact, I'm actually seeing more brands do better these days. I don't know why they're doing it, but I think they're for just in case, just look at the big bazaar ad yesterday. Pardon me?
I said they're reading your blogs.
Probably reading my blog, but I'm just one person. It's not the voice of India at all. I mean, it's not like the nation wants to know type. I'm just one person talking about it. That's it. But if you notice a Big Bazaar ad yesterday in Times of India, all editions, the 4 South editions have that headline in English, full English. The rest of India all has Hindi written in English script, basically. So that's a positive, interesting change. What they should ideally be doing is like what Zomato does. You also write the local language in English script in an English newspaper. That's eventually what people can move to, brands can move to. But I think more brands have understood that it is not about language. It's not about language interest or language chauvinism at all. It's just about not pissing off people in a particular state where they don't think much of Hindi at all, which is perfectly fine. You don't need to think big of Hindi at all, which is okay. It's just incidental part of my life, like English and Hindi. And I probably want to think more about my local language and the mother tongue, but that's perfectly fine. So pander to that Tamil-like sensibility and then do something more interesting so that people think, oh, this brand is trying to make an effort to appeal to my state better, which is pretty good. Take the example of Parachute oil, coconut oil. They have launched a package with Tamil writing on the pack, which is quite amazing. On a pack, actually. On the pack itself, it's written in Tamil saying Parachute oil in text from Tamil, which will be quite interesting for somebody walking down an aisle in Tamil Nadu or Chennai and Coimbatore and say, this pack, which is national brand, talking to me in Tamil. Wonderful, I'll pick it up one. Unfortunately, if I search on Amazon or Flipkart for that pack, it's not available. I'm not able to search based on saying Tamil pack Parachute. I'm not able to find it at all. So e-commerce is not doing justice for what they're doing offline, which is quite interesting.
Do you think a big surge, for this is also a consequence of just so much regional content available, right? Where brands literally have to take cognizance of the fact that a person's not waiting for some, Hindi movie to come out to be dubbed in a local language for there to be resonance. And a lot of OTT and even your, Indian social media platforms have enabled a lot of this regional language communication. So I'm assuming that's one of the indicators that's at least shaking brands up and saying you need to find a way to connect.
Most possibly. just take a look at, the most recent example is Pushpa going national. Pushpa is a Telugu first movie, but it was dubbed in multiple languages, and I'm told it's done extraordinary business in Hindi, actually. It's actually the pure North belt, which really likes, because the kind of emotions they show are completely universal. It's not specific to Telugu as a state alone. It's just completely national. And obviously OTT, which is a default for both subtitled content and dubbed content. You can pick and choose which kind of language that you want to watch. And most Indians have probably learned more Spanish through OTT than doing it on their own. That's how we are these days. That's another case. And I think more brands are more cognizant about the language scenario in India, that it is not English alone. It's not Hindi alone, pan-India. You can do more interesting stuff even with states. Just take an example of PhonePay's new campaign for two-wheeler insurance, where they say no inspection, you can do insurance. And they have done Tamil specific communication, small videos about 10-15 seconds that 2 characters speak to each other and then just sell the product. So it's a very, very Tamil, almost like it has been done by a Madras-based agency. It's that very localized, but it's done by a national agency. So they're very cognizant about that. Another really good example is probably the Ole Stem the Gap ad that they launched 2 weeks ago in India, or a week ago in India. It is truly a pan-Indian piece of ad. It's digital only. It's not a television ad. It's a digital only ad because it runs for about 2.5 minutes. But it has got 3 languages. It's got Malayalam, it's got Hindi, it's got English, which is quite... plus, it's also got Bangla in it. So it's got 4 languages in it. It's quite amazing. A brand ad with 4 languages is quite amazing, actually.
Do you see that as... One is obviously it's a trend that everyone's doing, but do you see that working better than what was almost par for course, right? You would do an ad. I remember always shooting stuff, shoot in English, maybe shoot it also in Hindi and just dub everything else, versus now saying, we need to do more language. We need to go actually cultural nuance plus everything else, and obviously really go deeper into that?
Yeah. I mean, earlier cultural nuance for South used to be putting this and then one veshti, dhoti and one white shirt, something like that. That's about cultural nuance that people can get. And for women, it was flowers in the hair and then some chandan kind of. So that's the basic cultural nuance that used to happen earlier. Now they are very, very conscious about how to do this better because they are going out and speaking beyond the balconies of Bandra and probably Gurgaon. They're going and actually knowing people, trying to understand them better. So it's working. I mean, in fact, I need to tell you this. There is a new viral ad for Jar app, which is actually like one of the finance app.
Fintech apps, yeah.
Fintech app, yeah. They have done a small video on, they're trying to mock NFTs mercilessly. It's a phenomenally funny thing. It's completely in Hindi and English. And it is shot in the beer club in Bangalore because there is a beer club branding there, which is quite prominent. So it's quite apparent that it's been shot in Bangalore. It's there. But the two characters and everybody else is largely talking in English and Hindi. It's a mix of English and Hindi. But at some point in the middle, the lead guy actually says 20 lakhs, 20 laksha. I was stunned. He's saying 20 lakhs in Kannada for that 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds, 20 laksha. And then he goes back to English and Hindi. But that adds the fun and flavor of that ad considerably. And all people in Karnataka are going to say, hey, he spoke Kannada. And there's going to be more attention on that ad, actually. So, it's probably done consciously, trying to infuse that extra interest in that ad. But it worked for me, at least.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know. I didn't notice that. So maybe because it's the language, I didn't notice it. Now that you say it, I might have to rewatch it.
Watch that.
I really like that ad as well, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It came together fairly well. So we've got the last couple of minutes with you. I want to ask you, I actually want to pick up the point that I brought up earlier, which is about Indians being easily offended, right? And you saw that in the report where literally the most trivial of things, that pepper fry ad of, like a wife throwing knife. Now, why that offends people is beyond me.
It's against men. That's what's offending us, like
violence
anti-men.
Yes.
That's what we have a problem with. That is that suddenly, like, we feel like the minority. I'm being sarcastic here. I'm just like putting
such fragile creatures.
I'm just clarifying to anybody listening. I'm saying this in the most sarcastic sense.
Guys, Varun is actually an MCP. I just wanted to let everyone know.
You're just spoiling his brand and reputation at the same time.
Same. Boom.
We've been taught well by Karthik today. And it goes back to, question that I brought up earlier, where in an era where folks are easily offended by everything, right? There's cultural appropriation, misappropriation right now. That show, the Sex and the City reboot, Sarah Jessica Parker got into a whole lot of trouble because her sari was a lehenga and not a sari, right? Yeah. So when you see this context switching happening from, national to local, and a way to basically incorporate more, locally relevant flavors, looks, feels, etc. into campaigns. How do you see brands straddle that along with, making sure that they're not cancelled tomorrow? And so, people end up nitpicking on the smallest of things, especially when you're trying to adapt, your brand to a local context or to a quote unquote woke context. How do you see the balance happening over here? Is it more leave it to the experts, give it to local creator teams, give it to local talent, see what they come up with? Basically, what's the execution process here?
There are two things. The local part is a slightly different topic compared to the outrage worthiness of content. That's slightly different. But of course, if you don't get the local part right, it might lead to outrage. That's also a connection between both. But for instance, just take an example of the Bima ad last year, which did extremely well, but it actually featured a trans person, basically. So that was the whole point, and it was really good. But again, compared to that with Priyanka Chopra playing somebody from the Northeast, and there was a lot of voices against saying, why can't you get a Northeast person to play that role? But it won't be as saleable as a Priyanka playing. So there is a compromise being made. Do you want to sell the content more, or do you want to get it more authentic? That's always a very dicey line between both. It's just up to brands to actually anticipate what kind of reactions would come, either this decision or that decision, and stick to those decisions as long as they're not doing anything illegal. All these are not illegal at all. And even an ASCI is not going to come down on you saying, how can you do that? It is just left to each person's discretion, saying, this might have been better like this. This could have been done differently, kind of. That's about it. So it's not something that you need to lose sleep over. as long as you have thought through saying, what if we get negative comments on these lines? This is something that I've done as a PR person all my life. PR, that's what you anticipate 10 different kind of counterpoints that come out for the statement that you're about to make, and then have answers for all of them. That's about it. You just work like a chess player. Think like a chess player, 10 moves in advance. That's about it. You just need to do it. The unfortunate problem is ad agencies are terrible in PR. They don't think PR at all. They think broadcast. They don't want to worry about what may people think. They want to worry only about, we want people to think only this thing. But people have 10 different points, and they will say this out on LinkedIn, social media, Twitter, TikTok, wherever it is. TikTok is banned in India, so they can't do it in India, but everywhere else. So they will do that. So anticipate that. Have a point of view saying, okay, if this is the view that comes out and everybody shares that view, how will we respond to that? That's about it, actually.
I have a final question to you, and I think that's more largely on a cultural instead. We started off talking about personal brands and I think reputation and everything else, and we spoke about how localization is happening. When you see how everyone's communicating now, because we're primarily online, as much as the offline is opening up and closing down, we are primarily online. How has that shift changed just from a communication standpoint? How we need to look at it as individuals for personal brands, etc., but also as brands? How have you seen that change? I think that's been one of the culturally and as human beings, you kind of shifted into this. How has that changed? How we perceive and actually execute these pieces?
I mean, I believe most of the metro dwellers and the more cosmopolitan people think in English. It is just an unfortunate situation or a fortunate situation, whatever it is. If you think in English, we are able to connect with the broader world, not just India, broader world, because largely people think in English. But in English, it just flows because I think in English. So that's how it works. But that's not probably the case with most of the tier 2, tier 3 folks who think in their mother tongue, and they're very proud about it. And I actually envy them that they're able to think in a language that once used to belong to me, but now I have lost touch with that. And I also think, and I also believe that as you age, you would probably move away from the English way of thinking because you're already done thinking in it for about 30 to 40 years and 50 years. You would start looking at more avenues and expressions. Can you go back to your mother tongue? Can you go back to your hometown? Blah, blah, etc. Which is just nostalgia playing up when you're turning 45 and 50 kind of stuff. So people would want to write more in their mother tongue, talk more in their mother tongue, and etc. But from a purely digital point of view, I think TikTok was a complete path-breaking product actually, because it did not ask people to write. It just asked people to talk and perform for 15 seconds. That's about it. Nothing more. 15 seconds, talk in your own language, just be yourself and be popular because of you being yourself. There is no writing, there is no reading, there is nothing. You just listen, talk. That's about it. It's so unfortunate that it was snubbed for various other reasons, but it was a truly cultural landmark. TikTok was a landmark because it gave voice, literally voice. It's not text. It's voice to so many people in villages and rural who used to spend 15 minutes of their day, which they could have either been working and making slightly more money for their lives. But they just enjoyed this thing saying, I am connecting with the broader India while I am just being myself and I'm just singing, dancing, I'm just having fun. We could be watching them thinking, saying what fools they are, but we are still watching them. They have our attention. And that was fantastic. I mean, my most favorite TikTok video, if you ask me anytime, there was a goat herd actually. And he was actually lip syncing to a song from, I think it was Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. And I mean, it's a monumental 15 seconds because he actually times his laugh with the way the laugh of SP Balasubramaniam, which was lip synced for Salman Khan. And he did it so beautifully. And I keep watching that video again and again. The kind of effort that a simple goat herd in a village with no civilization around, he and his goats, that's about it, 15 seconds. The effort that he has put into it, it makes me cry because he had that voice, he had the platform. Now it is not there for him at all, unfortunately. Quite sad, actually.
Sounds a lot like the rest of Indian media, just putting that out there. I think we've all learned a lot. And
thanks a ton, Karthik. Thanks for coming on.
Karthik.
I mean, I'm just going to prompt something. Towards the end of December, a very famous organizational psychologist named Adam Grant, he's quite popular on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. He wrote something about personal brand not being as important as personal reputation. I'm trying to disagree with him quite vocally, but he's actually a superstar. I'm nobody here in India, but I'm trying to disagree with him vocally because this is what I know reasonably well in life. That's why.
No, absolutely. And I think it's such an imperative topic, just given, how quickly things can escalate from like 0 to 100. And like Ashneer Grover is only the recent example. Both the Bansals have gone through their, degree of cancellation. VSS has gone through almost being cancelled. Nykaa has almost gone through being cancelled. So I think it's a powerful cause almost.
Just to interrupt there, the reason why the phrase personal branding gets such a bad rap is probably because of the influencers who don't stick to any particular topic but sell anything and everything. And then people think saying, okay, personal branding means boasting about yourself or selling multiple products and being an influencer and having a rate card, blah, blah. But that's not personal branding at all. Personal branding could be very, very focused and purposeful if you just define what your brand needs to be and live up to it. As simple as that. It's just that people look at the wrong examples or the more bizarre examples and think, okay, that's personal branding. I don't want to touch that with a barge pole. I would just let my reputation talk for itself. It doesn't talk at all. You need to make it sing. A simple example that I love giving generally is, for instance, we have a balcony which was plagued with pigeons at one point. I mean, I'm sure all of you have that same problem with pigeons and balcony coming. I mean, I love pigeons. It's very nice, but when they ship by the tons load, it's a big problem. So we actually wanted a pigeon net in our balcony. That's a simple thing. And I Googled pigeon net near me. That's what we do, right? We do Google basically. Pigeon net fixer near me. And we got one guy. He came, put his work, everything was done perfectly fine. And just before leaving our house, he said, can you please leave a good Google review for me? I was stunned. A pigeon net maker who can barely speak English, he's insisting to an audience, to one of his customers, saying, can you leave a good Google review? I just entertained him and saying, why would you want it? Saying, no, people search pigeon net fixer near me and they select those which have more better reviews. Wow, they just don't pick the first person. Those with better reviews. If a pigeon net maker can take care of his brand, why can't everybody else do that also?
No, but thank you so much for doing this, Karthik. This has been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Karthik.
Bye.
Wasn't he fun? Wasn't he great? Wasn't he awesome?
Good guess, Varun. Good guess. You are following my lead.
Yes, I'm following the lead really well. Let's get Adnan Mosseri next. Maybe not.
Yes, you please slide into his DMs.
I'll slide into his DMs. He does this really fun series of posts where he puts photos of basically the setups he has to do for online meetings, where he has a bunch of books stacked up, like basically showing like he's a normal person like all of us who stack mics on like
but he
books
isn't.
like I have right now.
Rich, and his boss is an Android as per you.
That's true. Boss could be an Android. I think Mark Zuckerberg is already in the metaverse. That person whom we see is just like a human Android. But before we digress further, are we taking a break? We're taking a break. We're right back for the final segment.
Habits? Routines? How exactly do they help us get better? Well, to simplify it for you, tune in to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashton Doctor and I'm going to be here to help you get better daily with some simple, easy to do habits that you can easily adapt to your life. So tune in to the Habit Coach podcast from Monday to Friday because I believe that awesome lives start with awesome habits.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where we've had an interesting chat with a fabulous guest. Suchita, what are you recommending this week? This is our final part. We just randomly recommend things to people.
Yes, I am actually reading this book for my book club. It's called The 48 Laws of Power. It's by Robert Greene. Yes. Yeah. I actually just kicked off reading this. It's a really weird book because
all Robert Greene books are this way, by the way. You should read all his books are like this, where it's a weird mix of things.
Yeah, but I really like the disclaimer that he gives because I don't think basically what he says is if you're reading this book because you want to become more powerful, joke's on you.
Yeah.
And essentially, I think he gives very helpful tools on how to navigate, all sorts of constructs, right? Whether it's, dealing with people who have high egos or it's, navigating all sorts of, struggles that you may or may not have personally, professionally, whatever else. So I think it's a really good primer on how to almost predict other humans' behavior. I wouldn't necessarily use this for myself, but I would use this to gauge situations much better. And just generally, like, I like books that talk about, how people behave and how they think. And at the end of the day, we're animals. So I think this is my recommendation for the week.
I'm going to recommend a random cold therapy pain or thing gel which I use. It's a company called Biofrost. It's great, guys. If you're sitting on desk for too long and your back starts to ache because you're old as like me, then buy Biofrost. They have not paid me for this.
In 7 months, turning
But on a more
40.
serious note, what do I recommend? I've actually been reading this really interesting book. And I actually have a correction. So last week, my recommendation, I said the book was called The Attention Economy. That book was not called The Attention Economy. So the book is actually called How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy. So I'm correcting myself for last week's gaffe. But what am I reading right now? I'm actually reading a book called, I know people are going to laugh. It's called Courage is Calling. We've both gone very deep this week. Courage is Calling. It's by one of my favorite authors. His name is Ryan Holiday. Writes about Stoicism. I read a lot about Stoicism. I read all his books and I consume a lot of content around.
I mean, Ryan Holiday technically is like pop Stoicism, but sure. I'll give that to you. He's like the Justin Bieber of Stoicism.
Is it weird that I bought Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, the Bhagavad Gita, and Courage is Calling in the same cart on Amazon? Am I going through a phase?
Yes, you are. It's called a midlife crisis, which explains why it took you 5 years to finish one sentence this episode.
Also, guys, buy this really nice bookmarker by Faber-Castell. It's called Textliner Super Gel.
Guys,
it's very
we
nice.
got to go. Toodles, my poodles. We hope you enjoyed this
guys.
episode.
We'll see you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita talk to Shefali Bhatt. She's the tech and culture reporter from The Mint. She gives her views on meme culture, the creator economy, and other internet trends. Check out our new podcast on parenting, Big Talk About Tiny Humans. In the first episode, hosts Devi Shobha and Meghna stress on the importance of eating together as a family. What are the current trends amongst global investors? Viraj Nanda, co-founder of Globalize, tells Anupam all about it on Paisa Vaisa. The Simplified Gang decode all the groundbreaking things that NASA's new James Webb Telescope can do. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk discuss the recent Quad Summit that PM Modi was a part of. And on the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik asks Devaya Bopanna about starting India's first DAO. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And also remember, you can check out a lot of our stuff on YouTube. Go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube and you'll get a list of all the various channels that we do have. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Remember the days when our granny used to narrate once upon a time stories? Let's bring back the good old days of moral stories with Storytime Tamil. Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran, host of Storytime Tamil podcast. I would like you to entertain and educate your children with stories from Storytime Tamil. Tune in to the new episode sharp at 7 p.m. every day on IVM website, IVM Podcast App, YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast from.